Welcome again, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I want you to turn to Luke chapter 17, verse 6. This is 5 minutes of faith. All right, we're in Luke chapter 17, verse 6. Have you ever asked yourself, do I have enough faith? Have you ever asked God, give me more faith? You know, this is where the disciples were told that they need to be willing to forgive 70 times 7 in a day. And you know what they said? Oh, God, increase our faith. And this is what Jesus answers them in Luke 17, verse 6. So the Lord said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be pulled up by the roots and be planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Evidently, faith is not a matter of quantity, but quality. We've got to just simply have quality faith. But how do you have quality faith? How do you know that your faith is quality? Well, it's interesting because Jesus continues on with a parable here about a servant and the master. He says, and which of you, verse 7, having a servant plowing or tending sheep, will say to him when he has come in from the field, come in at once and sit down and eat? But will he not rather say to him, prepare something for my supper, and gird yourself, and serve me till I have eaten and drunk, and afterward you will eat and drink? Does he thank that servant because he did the things that were commanded him? I think not. So likewise, when you've done all those things which you are commanded, say, we are unprofitable servants, we have done what was our duty to do. You know, quality of faith is evident by how obedient you are to do what God says. Submitting to God is the key to faith. You know, whenever we obey, or whenever we are praying and asking God for something, or we know God is telling us to do something, sometimes we hesitate because we wonder, what will the rewards be? Will God reward me? Will there be, what's the outcome going to be in this? And I don't know what the outcome is. And so we hesitate, but that's not what the good servant does. The good servant simply does what they're told and says, I'm not doing this for a reward. I'm not doing this because somehow I'm going to get something out of it from me. True faith in God does not question what kind of a reward we'll get. It doesn't even question if we'll get a reward. Our reward ultimately is obeying God. Our reward is doing what God said to do. You leave the rewards up to God. You leave the results up to Him. That's not where our faith is at. Our faith is in simply doing what God told us to do. If you'll do that, God is faithful. He'll do what He said. But we've got to be willing to do what He said. If we'll do what He said, then He'll do what He said, and He is faithful to reward those who diligently seek Him. Go to James chapter 1, verse 22. It says in James 1:22, be doers of the word and not hearers only. Have you heard this verse before? Man, to be a hearer only and not a doer, it's destructive, it's deceptive. It says here, if you will be deceiving yourself. For anyone who is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. This one will be blessed in what he does. Think about a mirror. The point or purpose of a mirror is to look in it and see where we need corrected, isn't it? You kind of look at yourself. And imagine if you looked in the mirror and you saw the things that needed changed. You saw your life that needed changed, areas in your life that you needed to change, but you didn't change them. And then you went away believing that you're good, believing you don't need to change, believing you don't need to do what God told you to do. I can do my own thing. I can do it in my own way, and you're not going to submit to God. This is what it's like to be self-deceived, and you're looking into the mirror and you're forgetting. You're a forgetful hearer. Be a doer of the work by submitting yourself to God. Just do what God told you to do. It's not a question of whether you have enough faith. It really is a question of, will you submit to God? Hear from God, get into the Word, find out what He says, find out His will, and then have faith to do it. Just do what God told you to do. And if you do, He promises to take care of you. He promises to bless and reward you. You got to have the faith to submit to God. Thank you again for joining me. I hope this has challenged you. I hope it's encouraged you. Another 5 minutes of faith.